So Inspector calls in 5 minutes. We're now on to Sheila's story, which actually doesn't take a huge amount of time. It's not very long, to be honest. But it doesn't start immediately. We get Burling going out at this point, and remember, he won't return now after this until halfway through Act 2. When he turns on the Inspector, we're having a nice little family celebration tonight, and the Inspector, once again, will always turn what he says back on him. You've made a mess of our family celebration. Well, you made a mess of Eva Smith. Burling, for once, decides not to respond and leaves. A bit more about the wanting to see the picture for Gerald and Eric. Eric and his slightly strange outburst about having a few drinks, and the Inspector telling him to stay. Really what I think we want to do here is to notice this little throwaway line by Gerald, where he says, after all, we're respectable citizens and not criminals, and the Inspector says, sometimes there isn't as much different as you think. Often it was left to me, I wouldn't know where to draw the line. Again, basically introducing, if we haven't already picked it up, the kind of the class issue that's here. People thinking that people higher up in class, respectable citizens, aren't criminals. Okay? Sheila returns. She's been crying. But what she does is almost immediately, she's straight in with this line. Again, what you want to do is compare this to Burling, who, of course, has said just a few minutes ago, I can't take any responsibility. Sheila, I'm really responsible, trying to take all the responsibility. Shows you the very big difference between them. Okay, and also at the same time, just like I mentioned, you should notice that Gerald agrees with everything Burling says, so therefore is just as complicit in his crimes, really, in some ways. When she says she's already told her father what he did, and he didn't seem to think it amounted to much. So Burling doesn't see an issue in what she did. She's just told him, obviously in upset, that she got this girl sacked, basically because she was feeling a bit upset, and he's like, well, so what? That doesn't matter. Another thing that we can use against Burling here. Okay, the Inspector points out when she tries to take blame, it's not entirely your fault, you're partly to blame, just like your father. That very important thing, it's about partly to blame, they're all to blame together, is going to be the key thing here. Sheila starts to tell the story and is very, very honest about it. Points out that she was in a furious temper and then gets furious with her because she's smiling at the assistant. Admits it wasn't the girl's fault, it was her own fault. And then, for the first time, turns on Gerald. Okay? So, the cracks in their relationship that were there if we were looking before emerge much more clearly after she's seen the picture, photograph, and taken responsibility. Okay? Gerald's obviously very surprised by that, doesn't expect her to be like that. Sheila goes into telling the story. It's, again, really just shows how pathetic really her response is. A few small details. She says again, like her father did, that Eva was a pretty girl, and mentions again how furious she had been. It's an interesting thing she mentions earlier on. It was an idea of my own to try it on. Mother had been against, and so the assistant. I don't know if that's suggesting, we can take it as suggesting that actually the person who had put her in that furious temper was her mother. It would certainly fit everything there. But we do see that she breaks down almost and only just manages to control herself. She points out that her feeling at the time was that she was very pretty and looked as if she could take care of herself. I couldn't be sorry for her. This is essentially the view of the middle class as they're brought up. Can't be sorry for someone if they're attractive. And she admits jealousy, which is not an easy thing to do. Admits jealousy, admits exploiting her power. So she's completely open about what she does, and that's very important, and understands that people look at her in a funny way. So we carry on. And we mentioned change her name to Daisy Renton. Of course, Gerald gives himself away immediately by saying what? And deciding he needs a drink. Sheila obviously spots it, staring at him. The inspector realises best thing to do at this point is leave the two of them on their own, and does. So we get this final little confrontation where we see the reality of Gerald and Sheila's relationship now. First of all, notice, how did you come to know this girl, Eva Smith? I didn't. Daisy Renton, and it's the same thing. Why should I have known her? He's not lying, not explicitly, but he is trying to avoid the truth. That's the way he seems to work. The best way for me to get away with things, I don't lie, but I just don't tell the truth. Okay, I leave the truth out. She'll keep pushing it, and all right, I knew her. Let's leave it at that. Like that's ever going to happen. She's not going to leave it at knowing that there was a girl there. When he says, "When did you get to know her?" he doesn't reply. When she brings up the fact she's the one you were seeing in the summer, he doesn't reply but looks at her. So he never actually admits it in that place. Of course you were. She follows up with, "I'm sorry, Sheila, but it was all over and done with last summer." A pathetic apology. "I'm sorry, Sheila, but it was over and done with, so it doesn't really matter." It's not really anything that's of great importance here. And we end with Sheila laughing hysterically as Gerald tries to keep it from the inspector, and she says there's not a chance. All we see here is that she understands the situation, and he clearly doesn't.